This is Amber Unabridged. This video contains explicit language. I'm here with some Jameson to bring you a slightly intoxicated March wrap-up video. Why be intoxicated? Well, I have to get through 30 titles, and I figured that stumbling over my words and then suffering while editing later was the best way to do this. So here we are. Actually, it's because I really needed to film it, and I was already drinking. I am going to actually, for real this time, unlike my last couple wrap-up videos, try to just get through these quickly. I may also lump a few things in together for reasons. So in March, I participated in 2 readathons. I completed both of them. I haven't posted wrap-up for either because I've been really behind on all things BookTube related. I love my Delirium Noel mug. It's April, it's not Christmas, but I got this from my grandma. She was like, "You want this?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I do." I've had it for years. The first book that I finished in March was An Irish Country Girl, the 4th book in the Irish Country series by Patrick Taylor. I liked it. It kind of backtracked. It wasn't part of like the main current narrative that the series is following or where the series started. It actually takes one of the side characters and delves into her past and her history and her story and how she came to be in the story that we started it with in the first book. On the one hand, I was like, okay, but I want to know what happens next. And on the other hand, I was like, all right, get it, Kinky. That's her name. It was really fascinating to read. The next book that I finished in March was Asking for It by Louise O'Neill. And I hated that book. I hated it so hard. It was written really well. I would be interested to see what the author could do with a different subject matter. While I feel that it probably does a really good job of conveying the characters, it doesn't go anywhere and there's no reward for the reader to have gone through that. And it made me very angry. It's written very well, but that made me hate it more. The next book that I finished in March was Vampires in Lemongrove by Karen Russell, and I loved it. It was a short story collection, and it was full of stories that were, the alcohol's definitely making this harder to speak. The stories were all magical realism. It was really well done and I enjoyed them very much. The next book that I finished in March is Minding Frankie by Maeve Binchy. I loved this book. I love Maeve Binchy. She tells really great stories. She understands people so well. I've loved her since the first book of hers that I read, which was Circle of Friends. And I was really happy to read another one of her books. It was so well done. The next book that I finished was The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. I really loved it. It was about an English woman who loses her job as a librarian and she decides to open a traveling bookshop in a giant van and move to Scotland. The next 3 are all picture books that I read at Barnes & Noble while I was there. I had coupons, that's what it was. I've developed a habit of reading picture books every time I go, trying to find some gems that I can eventually buy my nephew. I also just really enjoy picture books. I think that they're so wonderful and I enjoy them a lot. So they're all great in different ways. One was Press Here by Hervé Tillet. It's just kind of cool. I didn't actually press the colored circles on the page, but it was still really cute. Julian is a Mermaid by Jessica Love. When Grandma Gives You a Lemon Tree by Jamie L.B. Deanahan. It's sort of an elaborate when life gives you lemons, make lemonade type story. The next book I read was 100 Names by Cecilia Ahern. I listened to the audiobook and that's how they pronounced it, and I always thought it was Ahern. It was a story about self-appreciation, self-confidence, making, digging yourself out of a bad situation and building yourself up again. And it's also kind of a mystery and just a really great story, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. It is part of the Chronicles of Narnia. There's a great debate between reading the books in chronological order or publication order. So I went with the internally chronological order, and I kind of regret that. When I got to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I also read this month, so I won't talk about that a little bit later, I felt that some of the mystery was gone because I already knew what was going on. There were iconic scenes and moments that would have been just kind of quirky and fun that I knew the exact explanation for because I had read the origin story. I would highly recommend to anybody who has not read the Chronicles of Narnia to read them in the publication order. Start with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. After that, I read An Irish Country Courtship, number 5 in the Irish Country series by Patrick Taylor. That one picks up again from the main narrative, and it was alright. I also read the 6th book in the series in March, which was A Dublin Student Doctor, which goes back in the history of another character, one of the main characters, to show kind of his backstory. I'm going to end up missing something because I'm jumping all over now. I read Room by Emma Donoghue. That book was brilliantly told. It's very heavy, very difficult, but absolutely wonderfully told. Beautiful story in a tragic, awful, terrible kind of why does this happen sort of way. The next book that I finished in March, lighting is so strange. Okay, so the 5th season is part of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This book is brilliant. Oh, it's so good. I'm going to do a full review of this book, so keep an eye out if you're interested in learning some more about it. It'll be here soonish. The next book that I read was Maeve's Times by Maeve Binchy. It is a collection of essays and articles that Maeve published while working for a newspaper while living in London, I believe. Oh, that's what made the noise earlier. My books fell. Rude. It was really great. I love Maeve Binchy so much. She's a genius and she has so many wonderful things to say and so many observations that she's made that she's just awesome. Doing my whiskey dance. So I read the Stage Dive series by Kylie Scott. It's a 4-book series. It's a romance bordering on erotica. Lick, Play, Lead, and Deep are the 4 books in that series. They all take place around a band called Stage Dive. I actually really enjoyed it. It was really, really funny, and everybody was really sweet. It was just fun. It was just a really fun series, and I really appreciated it, and I was just kind of in a mood. In between those books, I read Unexpected Stories by Octavia Butler. These are 2 novellas or short stories of hers that had not been previously published. Man, all Octavia all the time. Just, that could be my life, and I'd be cool with it. Actually, no, she's kind of depressing. I mean, she talks about some real stuff, but like, whew, sometimes you just gotta read some smutty romance novels, which I did. I also read Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín. I'm not saying that right. I was really enjoying that story a lot, and then the ending wasn't an ending, and I hate when that happens. It doesn't seem like there's a sequel. It was written long enough ago that there should be a sequel if there was going to be one. I am actually extremely upset about this. Okay. After I finished the Stage Dive books, I was still kind of in the mood for that. So I found some more Kylie Scott, and she actually wrote, like a novella, like a spin-off from the story. It's book 4.5, but I read Strong, and then she has a spin-off series called Dive Bar, and it takes one of the side characters from the Stage Dive books and kind of follows him as he goes off on another adventure, and then kind of, instead of following a band, it all revolves around like this bar in this town and everybody who frequents it and like runs it and stuff. So I read the first 2 books in that series, which were Dirty and Twist, because it's a bar. I did read another book of Kylie Scott's, completely unrelated to anything else. It was an Audible exclusive, and it was called Repeat. It's about a woman who gets amnesia. The next book that I read, because I was kind of in a mood for romance novels, but I was still trying to read Irish things, was Wild Irish by C.M. Seabrook. And that book wasn't very great. The next two books that I read were also romance novels set in Ireland, and it was A Crack in Everything and How the Light Gets In by L.H. Causeway. And those stories were really good. And then the final book that I read in March was another romance book set around the Chicago Blackhawks, which are the nearest NHL hockey team to Milwaukee. I've been starting to get into hockey lately, so I was intrigued. So I read Pucked by Helena Hunting. It was an interesting story. My biggest issue was that all of the characters just got mad about the stupidest things. I mean the stupidest things. If they'd have taken 2 seconds to have a conversation about it, it wouldn't have escalated to the point that it did. The other issue that I had was I kind of wish there was more hockey. So those are the 30 books that I read in March. Many were audiobooks. Most were audiobooks. So if you have read any of these books or have any thoughts on them, comment down below. If you want to get together sometime and drink some whiskey, let me know. Anyway, I'm going to take my happy ass to sleep. Bye.